Wow, I am slow today. That is really moving slow. Hi, everybody. Welcome to our Thursday book launch. We are incredibly excited about tonight. We have Suzanne Cleary. Her book, The Odds, was chosen by poet Jan Beatty as winner of the 2024 Laura Boss Narrative Poetry Award, and the book was published March of this year by New York Quarterly Books, one of my favorite presses. I can't think of one that there's so many that I really enjoy, but New York Quarterly in particular. Cleary's Crude Angel was the fourth full-length poetry collection. It was published in November 2018 by Bookmark. I'm assuming it's at University of Missouri, Kansas City. Beauty Mark won the John Ciardi Prize for Poetry and also received Eugene Paul Nassar Poetry Prize and the Patterson Award for Literary Excellence. We're in for a treat tonight. One of my favorite quotes, I'm not going to read all the bio, but I really have to read this one part because I think this gives us insight into a really fun mind. Suzanne Cleary shares the name of a well-known Irish dancer. The poet is not much of a dancer, but she is an avid amateur painter. Just love that detail. She's also core faculty in the low residency MFA in creative writing program of Converse College. And so welcome tonight. Oh, good. Regina did make it in. Thank you for letting people in, Karen. I appreciate that. Suzanne, thank you so much for being here, letting us celebrate the odds with you. I am incredibly excited to hear you read these poems tonight.
Well, thank you so much for that lovely introduction. And I'm thrilled to be here. And I thank each of you who are here in the Zoomosphere for joining me this evening. And Malika, I'm thrilled to have been invited out of the blue to read in your lovely series. Most of the books, or most of the poems rather, that I read tonight are going to be from my new book, The Odds, but not this first poem. It's called Today the Pleasures, and it's for Meryl. Today the pleasures cannot come fast enough, for I am reading Meryl Oliver Douglas's poems while sitting on the porch in the white rocker, my bare feet touching the cool gray wood, my heels lifting as I rock and I read, and I am eating ice cream. Salted caramel cluster, non-dairy, but non-dairy is good, and the poems are so good that for entire pages I forget the ice cream. Even as I am relearning from these poems the pleasures of the body, how to love my body, and not out of vanity or pride, but out of gratitude, to love my weak bones and my crooked leg, my spinal canal narrowed such that my nerves jostle and make my feet go numb. How much longer will my legs work? Today they work. I rock, I stand, I walk to the kitchen with my empty bowl and hold it under cold water that swirls and swirls and then overflows onto my hands. Oh, this is everything, isn't it? This life I've been given, where clean water, mostly clean water, pours from a faucet into my 1960s yellow kitchen. This is the life, knowing it is the body that carries us wherever we go. We think that we carry the body, but no, we ride it as if riding a mule, which is what carries hikers to the floor of the Grand Canyon, because mules are smarter than horses, sure-footed and blessed with good judgment as to where to place on the rocky path each foot. Maybe the mule is less beautiful than the horse, but maybe not if seen from the right angle. Oh, for years I blamed my mother for teaching me to cheat myself of pleasure. She would say as we sat on a beach blanket or walked under trees, "No stopping for ice cream on the way home. We've had enough fun for one day." For years, I did not understand she was saying what Meryl's poems say. Savor, savor each thing. Um, Be, before I titled my book The Odds, that manuscript went through many different titles and I couldn't decide. But at one point I thought that maybe I would title the book for this next poem that I'm about to read, because I thought that this poem title might make the book sell. And the title of this poem is Sophia Loren Reveals Her Secret to Staying Young. When I get out of a car or I stand up from a chair, I never say, ugh. She pauses for the camera, shrugs, laughs. She wears the heavy black eyeglasses worn by Marcello Mastroianni, except with orange-red lipstick. Her smile, a discipline become habit, a habit become pleasure. Walking, she leans lightly on each arm offered. To do otherwise would be ingratitude and foolishness at her age, which she does not deny. How could she? There are photographs of her and her mother in 1948 feeding soldiers at small tables in the front room of her grandmother's house in Pozzuoli, what remained after the bombs of war. The scar on her chin? From diving to the floor. Some mornings you don't feel you would like to get out of bed, she says, but you do. This this next poem is based on a story that one of my former students in the MFA program at Converse University told me. That student is a wonderful poet, now friend. Her name is Gabrielle Freeman. This poem is for Gabrielle Freeman, and it's called The Beauty. She called it The Beauty and saw it nearly every day from her attic studio. The snake, sunning itself on top of the stone wall, all near 6 feet of it shining like black oil, like a slice of midnight come early, then gone, woven back into summer's grasses. But she knew it stayed near. So the morning she carried her pail to the barn and found the nests empty, hens squawking and eggs gone, she knew it was time to take beauty into her own hands. Although this proved more a matter of holding open the empty feed sack while beauty, untouched, poured itself in. Biting one end of a rope, she tied the sack tight, dragged it to her truck, settled it onto the floor beneath the glove compartment. How far did she need to drive? Who knew? Edge of the Blue Ridge, she released it, folded the empty sack over her arms. Some days she had seen it in the morning, other days late afternoon. Unpredictable, the beauty that sometimes one sees and sometimes disappears for weeks, invisible, though it spread itself long and shining in clear sight, hungry. I had to change one fact in that story um, because Gabrielle put the sack of the snake in the back seat behind her, and that freaked me out so much I couldn't stand it, so I changed it, put it in the front seat. This next poem tells a story. I didn't change anything from this story. This is a fact that I learned after reading a wonderful biography of Caravaggio, the Renaissance painter, early Renaissance painter. The book was written by Peter Robb, and that book really portrays, it paints really a very striking, vivid picture of what it was like to live during the time of the Inquisition and to live as an artist during a time of political, essentially, surveillance. And this poem is called In Memory of the Forgotten. In Rome in 1600, several famous painters, now forgotten, shared a pair of linen wings, tall as young poplars. Their ivory fabric frayed from leaning against whatever props had collected in whatever small studio. These two wings joined with rope and a harness, so the model could strap himself into the wings, dangle above the head of the painter, stare lovingly down into Christ's face, and likewise into the other faces of the poor who posed for the price of a piece of bread, a cup of wine. Likewise, into the face of this painter who needed an angel and fast to satisfy the eye of the Inquisition, which could be anywhere, and therefore was here in this very room where imagination lived and held its breath. This next poem is also based on something that I read in a history book. It's from Diane Hales's book La Bella Lingua, which is all about Italian language and culture. And this particular story and the fact at the center of this story really fascinated me, partially because I have never been good at memorizing poems. Maybe some of you listening here tonight are, but I'm not. But so at any rate, this particular story really caught my attention, and the poem is called "It Is Said." It is said that until 1950, every Italian could recite by heart 25 lines of Dante. So that in 1944, the partisan shepherds stationed at Pisa, ordered to shoot anyone out after dark without ID, would ask the stranger to recite from the Divine Comedy in order to prove himself Italian, the dialect to prove himself local. It is said that one night the footsteps were a professor of literature, the text the Inferno, 17th canto, the one where the usurers sit in the sand, unable to lift their eyes from heavy purses hanging from their necks. The professor's frozen breath sparkled, rising from the wooden shack checkpoint. The professor helpless but to love these words which make music of wretchedness. The shepherd helpless but to close his eyes, whether from emotion or fatigue, it would be hard to say. It is said that at line 117, the professor halted. Silent, he raised his hands to his mouth as if fingertips could lift the words from his lips. The shepherd opened his eyes, waited. Then he cleared his throat, recited the rest of the canto. This is the meaning of every. The shepherd in torn smock, as well as the man in frayed necktie, as well as no need for others to remark upon the transition from one voice to the other. Smooth, as when a woman with a basket of potatoes passes the braided handle from one arm to the other arm, so as to carry it home. I don't have any smooth transition from that last poem to this poem, because this poem is spoken in the voice of a fashion doll, a Barbie's best friend, Midge. And that's probably all you need to know about this poem, but I do feel compelled to tell you that I never played with Barbies that much. I was much more of a troll girl. Trolls were great. Midge. Hi, I'm Midge. Midge. Barbie's best friend? I rode beside her in the dream car if Ken couldn't be found, if Barbie didn't speed off alone. I'm cute, right? And sporty in my blue culottes and red tam, my tennis racket. Well, Barbie's sport mostly was dressing up. From Barbie barbecue to solo in the spotlight, white blouse with billowy sleeves, magenta velvet maxi skirt with rhinestone buttons, a sap green silk belt. Solo came with a microphone. Sometimes when Barbie was lying on the bedroom floor, her sharp little feet peeking out from under the dust ruffle, I would take that mic and I would wail. I would twist at my waist and raise both my arms and I would wail. The mic, my dream car, my sleek pink convertible with tail fins. Where would it take me? I never knew. Not for me, the dream house, the patent leather carrying case with its cardboard hangers, its little jammed drawers of accessories. Not for me, the hours spent deciding, does this go with this? Does this go with this? Barbie would ask me, and what could I say? I wanted to say, Barbie, it all goes together. Not for me, the pillbox hats and poof-toed stilettos. What could I, Midge, sell to America? I needed nothing. If Barbie was happy, I was happy. I'm going to read two more poems, this and the poem following it. And I always like to read, at least one new poem when I give a reading. And this poem is quite new. Giant. Giant is the film where Rock Hudson is upstaged by a piece of rope. He sits behind a big desk while James Dean sits before him, waiting to see if he'll be fired. For what? I've forgotten. There are lots of things that can go wrong on a ranch in West Texas. Hudson owns the ranch. Dean lives in a shack the size of an ice cream truck. In this scene, he holds a piece of rope 15 or 20 inches long. He drapes it across his palm, pulls it slowly off. He winds it loosely around his wrist, slips it off. Actors cite this scene as a masterclass in presence. Dean has the dirty blonde hair of the man I once saw at a funeral home, wearing a shirt from the local hockey team, bright green, a white number. He waited in line with the rest of us, and when finally he stood near the casket, he held the hand of the widow between his cupped palms, as if he were holding a bird. This last poem that I'm going to read this evening, before open mic, is a poem for which I had to do some research. And I'm going to go like this to make air quotes around what I've quoted from my sources. And I will add that this poem is based on a real experience, but I will never tell which parts of this are true and which parts have been made up. Literary discussion. We're standing in the conference room discussing Emily Dickinson's Scientific Eye, when at some point I say, Angie, as in Angie Dickinson, and I stop dead. blanch. I fake cough, start to back away when I notice no one seems to have heard me say, Angie. They probably are too young to remember her. She of the lacquered white blonde page boy that never moved from the early 60s until maybe today, for I think she is still alive. And so I let my slip slide, sure as Angie performing a soft shoe beside Frank Sinatra. Both of them wearing tuxedos, but Angie wearing only the top half, her long legs bare except for glossy nylon stockings. Angie of the turquoise eyeshadow, her eyes, whatever she trained them upon, full of adoration. As a poet's eyes must be, I believe. I could probably relate this to Emily, whose love for the world was thwarted by the world, yet never dimmed. Witness the scrapbooks she assembled of wildflowers and grasses, accompanied by Latin names in her tiny script. As the discussion continues, I cannot help but hear Angie's soft purr of a voice and my father's newspaper crinkling in his lap when he heard Angie and looked up at the TV at the only woman he'd ever found beautiful except for my mother. The show was Policewoman, which aired from 1974 to 1978, approximately the worst years of my life. Angie was Pepper Anderson, an undercover cop in LA. With a bit of sleuthing, I discovered that as of 2023, Policewoman is the oldest live action television series with all of its main actors still living, including nonagenarian Dickinson and Earl Holliman. Wasn't Holliman involved in Watergate? No, that was Halderman, and a different world from the one in which we now live, or maybe it's the same world, but with different actors. My father's been dead nearly 15 years, my mother 2 months later. I read on Wikipedia that by the last season of Policewoman, Dickinson tired of appearing in scenes where the phone rings while I'm in the bath. Don't we all? I mean, is there any one of us who is not awash with the time in which we live, in which we have lived? Did you know that Emily Dickinson loved to bake? I offer. She was famous for her bread and cakes. What feeds us, I wonder? I mean, why do we stand together and talk poetry as if we understand where it comes from? As if it isn't nearly always a surprise and almost embarrassing how much we love it. Thank you.
Couldn't be completely unembarrassed in saying, I love your reading. No, no shame. Oh my gosh. When you see the comments, Karen was saying her face hurts
Thank you
from
so much.
smiling.
You are a great audience. Each one of you, I could see your faces, and you're great. Thank you.
That's so good. Yes, I know people have questions. I've tried to look over the comments because I do want to touch back on some things that I saw recurring in regards to Suzanne poetry and her reading. Yeah, like Susanna just said, I love all the details that go into Suzanne's poems, baking bread. The details are fabulous. The internal dialogue of that last poem was amazing. The cadence is what got me in the first poem. It's not only a fun ride, but a well-written and just insightful. Yep. Ziggy said, I love how she goes from one idea to another and never loses the reader. Isn't that magnificent? Wonderful way to say that. Go ahead and unmute and start talking about this, Ziggy, because I think this is one of the things that is enjoyable about being able to talk to the author and ask questions. How do you come to a place where your poem's done?
Well, this is something that Suzanne and I have gotten into in class because I'm one of her former students. So I'll just use literary discussion as an example of going from one idea to the next. Like if you look in the Polyman involve Watergate, and then she goes off to Haldeman. It's so many ideas, but it really makes sense. And I think that's so cool. I wonder how she did that, and how could that rub off on me and us?
Right?
Well, well, let me say, dear Ziggy, that you have to be only have to be yourself, right? When you're writing your own poems. So you do what you do so well. To answer your question though, how I do that, I really don't know. I think what I most try to do when I'm writing a poem is to let myself follow the surprises that occur along the way. And if the name, whatever that actor's name is,
Angie
Holliman
and then
comes up.
Emily, that worked.
I
Yeah.
let the sound just trigger the other name, and this happens to me a lot when I'm writing. I will let myself kind of go off on what a former student of mine called a side swoop. And I love that idea of a side swoop. You let yourself get off track for a little while because there might be something there worth looking at. And a lot of my side swoops end up being crossed off or just left for maybe another poem. But it's great fun for me to write without fully knowing where I'm going, and then to kind of juggle and see what comes together. Was that a good answer, Ziggy?
I was going to say one of the things, and I do like the side swoop, but one of the things I think, the more that we've done these readings and celebrations is the uniqueness. And you hit upon that, Suzanne, with you write what you write. Like it's the authenticity. You experience this beautiful delight that the reader gets to experience because you follow this journey. You could say it's how your mind thinks associatively. You really have a delight. And so when you read it, we feel that. But it's almost like as unique as a fingerprint, this writing into what works best for you as a poet. And I just want to say thank you because it's not a gift all of us have, like Ziggy said. And so to see it in action is lovely. It's fun to see somebody be able to do that side swoop, and we're right there with them. I mean, if somebody took a left turn too quickly, I'd get left behind, but you keep me up. So that's not an easy task. That is not an
Thank
easy
you. That's very
task.
generous.
Not a surprise that you're a painter. I do think some of the exacting details are just amazing. It is literally like seeing a painting in words, the way you create and describe, and then still keep the musicality. It's a lot of fun. Yeah, let yourself explore is what Ziggy said. Yes, I think there is a light touch and a playfulness that Suzanne brings into her work, and it really is something that I've had to learn. I tended to keep tight reins, uh, and to loosen up was a good thing. Do people have questions? And of course, you already know why I was obsessed because she'll talk mules and horses and knows that mules are really smart. So how could I not love Suzanne? Any specific questions about this book or her process? The new poems, which were fat. Thank you for reading those. That's always fun. Okay. Well, then I'm gonna go ahead and we'll head towards
Malika,
open mic, but yes, jump in, David.
Malika, would it be all right if I asked Susie to read Worry Stone?
I
It's
think
a
it's a
short
great
poem.
idea. I'd love her to keep
Yeah,
reading, to be honest, David. So thank you. So we're
Okay.
yeah.
basically holding up lighters and saying encore. Sorry, Suzanne.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's okay.
Could you do that, Suze?
More,
Sure.
more, more.
That's my husband. And I didn't ask him to do this.
It's awesome.
Oops.
Okay.
No,
Yeah.
I think it's great. I think that's a fabulous idea.
But I'll say that this is a poem that I thought might be the title poem for the book when I didn't yet know that this was going to be called The Odds. For a while, for maybe like a year or so or more, this book was called Worry Stone. And you all know what a worry stone is. You know, it's kind of a smooth little stone that you hold and you rub it, and it's supposed to calm your anxieties, right? Well, I'm not too proud to say that I'm a worrier. I wish I weren't, but I worry. And I actually did buy a worry stone. I'm kind of embarrassed about that. It didn't really help me with my worry, but I did get a poem out of it. So anyway, this is called Worry Stone. The idea is to carry in one's pocket the polished stone fashioned of pink marble with an indentation the size of a thumbprint, a place to send tension out of one's body into stone simply by touching the stone, by stroking it, by turning it over and over and over and over until it grows warm and boring, which is good, which is as it should be, one's thoughts turning back to the larger world that contains things like the house you once saw through the bus window in Utah. It sat at the base of a rocky mountain whose name you never knew, a single-story stone ranch, in its front yard a 30-ton, maybe 40-ton rock. How does one weigh such a thing? It was tall as the roof. Someone had placed a circle of white stones around the rock to make of it something more, as you cannot help but do. Nearly every day you think of that rock. You wonder what came first, the rock or the house? Some days you think the rock came first. It made the land cheap, bought by someone who believed the worst had happened. He would be safe there in the dark blue shadow of the mountain. Other days you decide the house came first, built by someone who believed that nothing in the world could harm her. This, the woman you would choose to be. She who sits in her front window with a mug of tea while a 40-ton rock takes a wild bounce and flies over the roof.
Awesome. Thank you so much for asking for that, David. And again, that poem just widens and widens. I also have to say, but I did get a poem out of it, is a phrase that I have said about so many things in life. And I'm sure every poet has said that same thing. We should probably get t-shirts, and that's that club, but I did get a poem out of it. Oh, that's so
That's what
good.
matters.
Yes. Yes. No, that was great. And thank you for doing that, David. I did want to come back to what you said too, because titling a collection is, I think, so challenging. And so it sounds like I'm glad to know that other people have, like I have called a collection something for like a year and a half and then realized, oh, that's not right. And I did have a publisher say, why are you so bad at titling your collections? Because, I'd send it to him and be like, this is not right. What the Trapeze Artist Trust was something entirely different. I probably can't even remember it because I blocked it. It was so bad. But can you talk a little bit about that process? Because I think it's very reassuring that someone, at a skilled and masterful level also has to wait until something's, steeps a little.
Yeah, there was a point when I had finally identified a poem that would work as the title poem for the book. And that poem was called The Odds. I realized that so many poems in my book were about luck, the luck of the draw, chances, just things like mortality, fate. It was running throughout my whole collection. So I thought, okay, The Odds will be the title poem for my book. And if you have my book, you know that there is no poem in there called The Odds, because I could never finish that poem to my satisfaction. Maybe someday I will. But I would say, though, that for me, understanding that my book had this sort of through line of poems that were about just the incredible risk of being alive, risks,
Yeah.
you know, good and bad, but they're all over. And I thought, okay, my title is The Odds. Now I finally know.
Thank you for that backstory. I'm so glad I asked that question. The title, I love the title. I even love the idea that the poem that you were writing it doesn't surprise me. You're very exacting. It didn't end up in the book, but it does fit as the title. That's amazing. Oh, and it did remind me of something. I was in Alaska for my honeymoon at a bar, and the guy said, if you're single here and a woman, the odds are good, but also the goods are odd. I don't think, and he wasn't wrong. That's awesome. Thank you so much for talking about that. Any other questions or thoughts that you would like to add for Suzanne?
Another
Just
thing
making
that
sure I don't move too soon. All right.
oh, sorry. I was trying to say, can you hear me
Go ahead,
okay?
Mm-hmm.
I was going to say that one thing
Yes,
that I
you're perfect.
love about Suzanne's poetry, it's something that we studied when we were together doing my MFA, is that these are poems of the everyday, poetry of the quotidian. It's poems about how she's reading or how she's writing. Like the opening poem where she was sitting and rocking and being grateful for having her legs. I love how in her poetry, it's not really a question, but I just maybe it is a question. Maybe it could be phrased as a question. How do we see the magic in the mundane? Or how do you see the magic in your mundane? Because that's really what I saw in her poems. I'm here, I'm taking notes. Something will
Oh,
go off, I hope.
oh, you've always asked such good questions, Ziggy. Yes. Yeah. How do you see the magic in the mundane? Again, you know, I'm tempted to say, you know, as an answer that I don't know, but I know that when I think of my poetry and writing my poetry as a way to help me be awake and alert and to just see
Mhm.
things around me instead of being in a kind of a daze, you know, not really noticing my life moment to moment. I think poetry for me is about being being awake. And so very often for me, when I'm writing a poem, I'm writing something down. It starts as notes to just help me look at something that's right in front of me that feels worth looking at, but that maybe I don't usually notice, like the feel of my bare feet on the porch floor when I'm in my rocker. You know, that's just the kind of thing that I could sit in that rocker for hours and not even know that I have a body, you know, if I'm reading a book, say. But I want to be the Suzanne Cleary who's more alive. And so I think that for me, my poems often, I think of my poems as kind of gifts that are given to me. You know, if I open my eyes, I will see something right there in front of me that is a poem. I don't have to manufacture it out of what's the expression, out of thin air. It's actually
Yeah.
poetry, I think, is all around us. And for me, my job as a poet is to just open my eyes and open my ears and notice what's around me. My poetry for me is not so much about going inside of me and drawing up things from this well, although that always happens. We can't help but bring ourselves to whatever we see. But I think of my life as a poet as this really is essentially a struggle to be awake. And writing poetry helps me to do that. And I think because of this, my writing is full of kind of ordinary things that are, if you look at them, you know, quite extraordinary. I'm startled, you know, I'm startled if I just open my eyes. And, you know, a lot of times I'm not paying attention to things. But when I'm writing a poem, part of the excitement and the fun for me is, part of me is saying, oh my gosh, you're so alive right now. You're really seeing that. Oh, wow, it did feel that way. And it's a kind of a heightened
Love that.
experience of being alive.
Ziggy, thank you for that question. We wouldn't have had that answer. Oh my gosh. Made me think of presents. Susanna, you have something?
Suzanne, I just realized, I don't know why I didn't realize it before, that all your books have 2-word titles. And I wondered if that was deliberate or accidental.
No, that's a great question, and I can answer it. It's definitely deliberate. I like to have a very brief title, and maybe that's a little odd because I love a long title. I love a lot of my poems have titles that run like to a second line, all the way across the page, and most of then the second line as well. But I like a brief title because and ideally it's a title that's kind of visual also, although the odds isn't particularly. I like the brief title, and I think it's a good idea when you're titling your book to think about how will the cover of this book look if it's ever, say, in an advertisement. Will that title be big? Or will it have to be smaller because there are a lot of words in it? Will it let your name be big? I sound like such an egotist, but I'm thinking in terms of like the painter side of myself, maybe. I want the title to be brief. I want it to be brief, and I thought of just entitling my book for a moment. I thought, how about just odds? And I said, no, that I like the 2 beats, the odds. It's also it's iambic. It's it's the heartbeat, the odds, the odds, the odds. But I love a brief book title. I'm glad you asked that, Susanna. Nobody ever asked me that, and for me, it's a real issue that I always have just a 2-word title.
This is why I love the question Q&A, because we have such amazing people asking questions, and the questions put us in a whole nother place. It's fascinating. I love it.
Yeah.
Thank you for that, Susanna. Anybody else? Because that's been fun too. All right. My sense is we'll go ahead and come to open mic. If I don't say your name, please send me a reminder that you would like to read for open mic. Suzanne, thank you again so very much. This has been a very fun night. I have Christy, Karen, Cal, Susanna, Glenn, Ziggy, Bob, Regina, and David. If I did not call your names, say something to me and I will come back to it. Christy, you're first, and I'm going to pause per request. Let's see. They've changed how I get to the video. Let me see if oh, there we go. Starting again. I have Karen next.
Okay. Oh, I'm so glad I got to hear that poem again, Christy. So, yeah, reveal here. We were Zooming earlier this week, and we were both sharing Marge Percy poems and writing in response to them. So that I'm sharing one of mine tonight too. So this was 2 poems, and then I don't know, today it decided to be 1. I hope it made the right decision. It's a little bit weird. It's a little brooding, I think. I don't know. Anyway. Singing Moon's Grave Markers. In the long rains, our brains, shuddering like boxwoods, salting tombstones, we wander, the wet of green mazes, facing down broken busts of anonymous corpses somewhere far from appropriate coffins. Here, there is never time enough for beating the walloping raindrops to their finishing lines. The end is always so maybe never near enough. Always about mooning. The moon is always, often of razor blade wishes I could take off like a dress, always, like a calm, like truth, like a tiger, hot and silent. We were always goddesses, fashioned of clumsy stone and masks, our careful fingers learning the living jokes. We were throats and lips, young long before teaching boys to be the ring of a person wandering around in the side yard, mooning as in pining, always away, some kind of away. I don't know, y'all.
Wow, Sharon. No, I love it. And also I did want to point out Laura nailed it. She said, I love how you give your poems agency. You said it decided to be one.
They do that, you know.
I know your relationship with your work.
I know. I'm
love
just
it.
trying to. I'm just trying to catch what they're telling me.
You're transcribing. I know you have
I'm
fun, and I can see
transcribing.
I see your fingerprint in your work. I mean, your spirit, your unique way that your mind thinks, and I love it. Susanna, make sure you unmute. There we go.
Thanks. I'm just going to ask you to stop the recording.
Well, but yeah, give me one